Hi, I'm Lorenzo Stokes. I'm the author of the Linux Memory Manager, which is a extensive book about the memory management logic within the Linux kernel. It targets version 6.0, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the target audience and the intent and how the book is and the philosophy of it. So, the target audience, always from the beginning, is fundamentally an interested hacker who wants to understand how memory management works in Linux and wants to understand without hand waving. Most books on this topic inevitably, by their nature, have to hand wave. They talk from a top level, like we're talking, say, operating system textbooks that you'll get in college and so on. And they won't go into any detail about how it actually works. They'll talk about the buddy allocator and virtual memory and how a universal page cache works and page frames and this and that and the other thing. And you'd be like, cool, interesting. How does this relate to reality? And that leap could be a chasm. One thing I've always liked myself in a book is when it's so specific that you can then go and look at the source code and see in action the fact that we are talking about this very specific thing. There's no hand waving. What I'm learning now relates to the thing I'm interested in. And this is why I did it this way. I was writing for myself what I would love to see, what would excite me. And the idea is we go bottom up. We have a topic and we look at some basic things that are like the data structures and so on, and we just build up from there. What function allocates physical memory? Look at these parameters. This is a GFP flag. So what's a GFP flag? How does this relate? And then throughout, we look at the actual kernel code. We have code snippets. And the book really becomes a code commentary, like the famous Lions book, and like the original Virtual Memory Manager by Mel Gorman from 10, 12 years ago. And then we can see in action, okay, this is how physical memory is on a conceptual level, this is how it's allocated, but let's look into the actual code that does it. Let's see how a GFP flag changes things. Let's see how a buddy allocator actually gets that memory and drops it up and provides it, and then so on and so on. And then different areas of the memory manager, so physical memory allocation, virtual memory mapping, the reverse mapping, which relates physical memory back to virtual when you're doing things like reclaim itself, the swap, the page cache, write back, and so on and so on and so on. And each of these topics, we start the same. We start with the basic concepts and then we build up. And in fact, this is how it was written. The source material throughout the whole thing was just the kernel source code. And I started with ideas of things I understood on a fundamental level, and then I dug and then I wrote. And then, not only that, we have diagrams that really try to elucidate what's going on. We have discussions which get into tribal knowledge, things that the kernel and the authors just assume that you know, and that I dug into to really try and understand, writing little programs, digging into the code, even print K debugging and so on, to really see what's happening. And then to save people from having to do that themselves and explain it and write about it. So this is kind of where I'm coming from with the book. Inevitably, there are things I can't cover because it would just take too long. It's already a pretty big book, and there are things that perhaps I would have liked to have covered, but in the end just couldn't for time. But this provides a fundamental basis, the really basic stuff. 1,300 pages, only the basic stuff. Well, memory management's complicated in a modern kernel. And one of the key ideas as well is to get people confident with reading the code such that they can transfer that skill to a modern, more recent kernel. So 6.0's quite a few releases back now. Like, inevitably, you have to choose a version when you're writing a kernel book, and stick with it because it's too much of a moving target otherwise. It's just not practical otherwise. But it's way, way closer than any other material that's out there, right? But the idea is we provide the skill and help build up the skill to read the source code and then use that such that a reader can then take these concepts and these ideas and these fundamentals, most of which haven't changed, and update them to the latest kernel. So then it becomes a sort of a teach a man to fish kind of situation as well. And that was a clear intent throughout, and this is why the book, when you see a function name, if you've got the ebook version, you click on the link, it will go to the source code in context. This is why we're doing the snippets, so I've thought about this right from the start. So yeah, I thought maybe it'd be interesting for me to give my point of view as to the intent and philosophy of the book, and maybe that's of interesting for you as a reader or potential reader.